Ladies and gentlemen, I threw a question out on my Twitter feed, and it's called Yankee Mount Rushmore. I wrote a column. I'm just going to read briefly from it. I threw this question out 5 years ago on Twitter. It's a unique spin to an old question. So I came up with this is unique to me. I came up with this question. I kind of invented it, if you want to call it that. And you say, well, Mount Rushmore, Mike, I mean, the concept of Mount Rushmore is far from a novel idea. But again, here's the unique spin that I put on it. Now, we all know that when you talk about from a sports context, when you say Mount Rushmore, you're talking about the four greatest players of that team's history. So when it comes to the Yankees, there's not much debate. Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio, and Mickey Mantle. Those are the four on Yankee Mount Rushmore. When you think of them, they cover the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s. When you see footage of those players, their black and white footage, you look at their incredible statistics, you marvel. But here's what I found interesting, and here's what the spin that I'm putting on it. The old stadium, the original Yankee Stadium, was built in 1923, the house that Root built. Well, exactly 50 years later, George Steinbrenner bought the Yankees. 23, the house that Root built. 73, George Steinbrenner buys the Yankees. So we're basically talking now, as we sit here, we're basically talking about 100 years of history split up evenly. We talked about 5 decades, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s with the old-time Yankees. Well, George Steinbrenner, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and now we're in the 2010s decade. So we're in the 5th decade with George Steinbrenner ownership and his family. So that's where the question comes. Let's keep the iconic old-time Yankees Mount Rushmore. But let's also build a new Mount Rushmore for the new Yankees. We'll call it the Steinbrenner Yankees. And I think it's a very interesting question. And what I would say is that I don't think there's going to be too much debate with the first two that go on Steinbrenner Mount Rushmore. Derek Jeter, we were just talking about him, 310 lifetime batting average, 3,465 hits. There are only 5 players, you can count on one hand, there are only 5 players that have more career hits than Derek Jeter. Pete Rose, Ty Cobb, Hank Aaron, Stan Musial, and Tris Speaker. That's it. He's an iconic player, Derek Jeter. He goes on Yankee Mount Rushmore. When you think about the fact that it's not only the hits, it's not only the fielding. He was a superb base runner, but it's also the heart and the hustle. Heart, we all think of him diving head first along the third base line during a regular season game, making a great catch against the Boston Red Sox, coming out all bloodied. We think along the first base line, the hustle, the backflip in the postseason. Who else would have thought to be backing up a play like that and to make the flip to Posada? So besides the regular season, postseason, 200 career hits, 5 rings, and off the field. Family man, his mom and his dad came to every home game. Then the second person on the list is just as good a human being, Mariano Rivera. He's literally built a church in his hometown. Mariano Rivera, whose career ERA, regular season, 2.21, the lowest of any pitcher in Major League history with a minimum of 1,000 career innings. The saves, 652 saves, number 1 all time. Here's what's also amazing. No drop-off in performance right up until the end of his career. We just said 221 career ERA. His last 6 seasons, he had a lower ERA than 2.21, right up till the time he retired. Amazing. But here's the most amazing thing, ladies and gentlemen. In the postseason, his career ERA was 0.70. Pull out a calculator. 2.21 regular season ERA, divide that by 3. You have a lower ERA. He was 3 times better in the postseason against the best batting orders, the best lineups during the steroid era, during small American League ballparks. All of that, you put that all together. He gave up 2 home runs in the entire postseason. So, again, the first 2 are not that difficult. But then it does get more difficult. You have names like Don Mattingly. You have names like Bernie Williams, Thurman Munson, Reggie, Guidry. And that's where it gets hard. And what I'm going to do is, for the sake of this, since there's no one else that's a no-brainer to put up there, some don't have the longevity, some, for different reasons. So what I'm going to do is, because that there's no slam dunk, check off all the boxes, nominees to put up there, I'm going to spread it around to the Steinbrenner era. And what I'm going to say is, I'm going to cover the 70s, which were very important because the Yankees won the first championship in 77. That brought us all the way back to the drought that we had that went back to the 60s. And I'm going to pick one from that team. And the other one, I'm going to pick from the era where the Yankees did not win a World Series in the 80s. So I'll start with the 80s, and I have to go with Don Mattingly. 307 career batting average, 6-time All-Star, 9-time Gold Glover, American League MVP, 1985, American League batting champion in 84, American League RBI leader in 85. Ladies and gentlemen, you could look it up. He had 4 years during his prime that were Lou Gehrig type. I mean, 343 batting average, 352 batting average, 145 RBIs. You could look it up. Unfortunately, in 87, he hurt his back. And then from there forward, his career was never the same. So unfortunately for that, he does not have the statistics that'll probably put him in the Hall of Fame, but you can put him on Yankee Mount Rushmore if you want to put him up there, for the simple reason that he was the face of the franchise for the entire 80s. As far as the 77-78 year, if you want to say Reggie, no problem there. The only problem with that is that he only spent 5 years with the Yankees. He didn't come up through the organization. I would narrow it down to Thurman Munson or Ron Guidry. Guidry had 170 wins and 91 losses, 2-time World Series winner, 5-time Gold Glove winner, the American League Cy Young in 78, 25-3, almost single-handedly helped the Yankees win the World Series in 78. And then there's, again, getting back to Reggie Jackson, you can make the argument for him, 77, when he hit the 3 home runs in the clinching game in the World Series, 1977. I was at that game. That game will go down forever in Yankee lore. And if you want to give Reggie the nod, can't blame you. I'm going to go with Thurman Munson, 292 career batting average. He was the American League Rookie of the Year and the American League MVP. American League Rookie of the Year in 70 and the American League MVP in 76. He was their captain from 76 to 79, 7-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champ, 3-time Gold Glove winner, and we all know, unfortunately, that he died before his time in a tragic plane crash. So those are mine. I got a tremendous response from Twitter. I'd like to read a couple, and then we have some callers that are on the line. I'm going to read one from Pete Bell. He wrote in on Twitter. He said, Jeter Rivera, Reggie Jackson, and Don Mattingly. Honorable mention from Pete. He went with Posada, O'Neill, Bernie, Guidry, Pettit, and Gossage. Can't argue with any of them. Bernie Williams had a 297 career batting average. He had 5 All-Star appearances, 4-time World Series champ. He was the ALCS MVP in 96, 4 Gold Gloves from 97 to 2000. And Bernie Williams was the AL batting champ in 98. Can't go wrong there. Von Cole said, Jeter, Rivera, Reggie, and Bernie. He said, I want to say Donnie, but he didn't have the championships. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go over to our busy phone lines, and we are going to welcome in Jorge. He's calling in from Yucatan, Mexico. Jorge, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Jorge, thank you for calling in. On Twitter, I know you saw the question. Going to ask you, Steinbrenner Mt. Rushmore. Give us your top four.
Yeah, I divided it, okay, from the 20s to 60s. I chose Ruth, Gary, DiMaggio, and Mantle, but it was really hard to get Yogi out.
Right.
Okay, and from 70s to today, the captain, Thurman Munson, Jackson, Jeter, and Mariano. Wow. And also Mattingly was really close.
Very, very good answer. So I want to thank you for calling in. Before I let you go, I want to ask you, you live in Mexico. Do you just watch the games? Have you ever been to New York City? Have you ever been to Yankee Stadium in person?
Yeah. Thank God. Yeah, I am very fortunate. In fact, I was during the last home games in the stadium of both Mariano and Jeter on 13 and 14. We went once. I went with my son to see the final games of Mariano, and then the next year I went to New York with my daughter to see the final games of Jeter. And I, of course, I had the MLB, but that TV so at bat, so I follow each and every game of the Yankees on the net.
I want to thank you, Jorge, for taking a couple of minutes to call in today, and I look forward to speaking to you next time.
Of course, I'd be honored to, Mike.
Okay. Let's go back to our busy phone lines, and let's welcome in Jeff. He's calling in from the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania. Jeff, are you with us?
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Good to speak to you, Jeff. My question is, Steinbrenner Mt. Rushmore, since we're in our fifth decade and there's some symmetry there, the old stadium opened up in 23. George bought the team in 73. We're in our fifth decade. Give me your top four Yankees from 73 forward.
Thurman Munson, Ron Guidry, Derek Jeter, and Mariano Rivera.
Good answers. Hard to argue with that. You know, the captain, Thurman Munson, Ron Guidry, who can forget his season in 78, put the whole team on his back with that 25-3 record. Great answer, Jeff. Thank you for weighing in on that.
Well, thank you. Thanks for taking my call again.
Okay, let's go back to the phones and let's welcome in Ed from Pelham, New York. Ed, are you with us?
I am.
Ed, if you had to put four names, four individuals on Steinbrenner Mt. Rushmore, what do you have?
I got Guidry, I got Mattingly, I got Jeter, and I got Mariano Rivera.
Wow, great answer. You know what I like, and you know, there's no right, Ed, we all understand there's no right or wrong answer to this. But what I like about your answer is you span everything from the Steinbrenner era forward. We understand. We know that he bought the team in 73. So you have that 77, 78 team covered with Guidry. But then you also took into account Don Mattingly. We all feel so bad that the only thing missing from his resume is the championship rings. And that was not his fault by any stretch. He just did not have enough pitching.
Yeah, I didn't have the team around him. And it's too bad he's not going to get a shot at the Hall of Fame because there's a lot of guys in the Hall of Fame that had nearly the impact that he had. And this business of that, well, he didn't play long enough, it's not right. It's just not right.
He had 4 years, and
right.
You know it as well as anyone. He had 4 years that were as good as any player ever had. And when you think of the 9 Gold Gloves and all of that, it's a shame that he hurt his back in '87, and he was never the same after that, even though he played to 95. Back to the phones we go. We are going to welcome in TJ from Batesville, Arkansas. TJ, are you with us?
Yes, sir. How you doing, Michael?
TJ, great to speak to you again. You saw the question on Twitter. I'm going to ask you to weigh in, if you will. We all know the iconic Mount Rushmore when it comes to the old-time Yankees. We all know it's Ruth and Gehrig and DiMaggio and Mantle. But Steinbrenner has owned the team since '73. There's some symmetry there since the old stadium opened in '23. So we're basically talking about 100 years and split almost down the middle. So the last 5 decades, if you had to say from '73 to current day, Mount Rushmore, the Steinbrenner Mount Rushmore of Yankees, who would you give us?
I'm going to change from what I initially said, but I'm going to go with Reggie, Don Mattingly, obviously Derek Jeter, and Mariano Rivera.
TJ, you mentioned you just came back from spring training. You were down at the facility with all the changes that were made, and
yeah, they had construction going on, Mike. So you didn't get to go down like you have been able to in the past, but it was still a good experience. It was a little disappointing not be able to get right down like you normally would, but it was the main field was accessible. It was good to see, like I said, the young kids. I got to talk with Joe and Meredith Marakovich. Greg Bird is a really nice kid. I wished him well. Obviously he's going to be huge.
Now, when you say you spoke to Joe Girardi, you're speaking? Oh,
yes, sir.
Oh,
yes,
wow.
Sir. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. No, I was down. I went right down by the dugout, and he came out. He'd pop his head up, come out and talk to some kids and sign some balls. And I was able to see him and Greg Bird. And Joe's always been a class guy. I've always liked the guy. I've always been behind him. I think he manages the bullpen as well as anybody with the personnel he's dealt. And he's always been just a top-notch, classy guy.
Yeah, I agree with you. Definitely. TJ, want to thank you for taking a couple of minutes and look forward to speaking to you real soon.
Hey, I appreciate it, Mike. You have a good day. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you, TJ. Thanks for calling
in. Bye-bye.
Okay, back to the phones we go. Let's welcome in Charles, calling in from Maryland. Charles, are you with us?
I am. How are you?
Good, Charles. You saw the question on Twitter. You saw my question in terms of Steinbrenner, Mount Rushmore. Who are your top 4?
Yes. My top 4, well, the first 2, I thought without question would be Jeter and Rivera, just because they were the linchpin, I think, of the last dynasty. Munson, because, Thurman Munson, why not? Yeah. And also, only Rookie of the Year and MVP for the Yankees. And O'Neill, mainly because O'Neill has always been my favorite player. Just the passion, the intensity that he played with.
Great answers across the board. As you said, Thurman Munson, the tragedy, we all, those of us that are old enough to remember that, I was just shocked and stunned for days learning that he crashed his plane. I just had a sick feeling in my stomach for the rest of that season. And he was a captain. He was, Reggie might have stirred the drink, but he was the heart and soul of that team. Correct, Charles?
Oh, absolutely.
Charles, I want to thank you for calling in. As a last question, I want to ask you, you're from Maryland. Have you been to Yankee Stadium? Do you have any memories being at Yankee Stadium for any memorable games?
Oh, absolutely. I was born in New York. I grew up in Baltimore. I was the last one born in New York. My dad's job brought us down to Maryland. So, I grew up with parents from Brooklyn. So I grew up a Yankee, Giants, Rangers fan. And I've been to the old and the new stadium. And I think one of my 2 quick sort of favorite games. One, going back to O'Neill, it was a game where I forgot who they were playing, but it went out to right field. It was like O'Neill went all out, grabbed it, went sliding across the turf. Everyone was on their feet as he's going to get up. He gets up, everyone applauds. Next inning, he comes up to bat and smacks it out.
Wow. Well, that's a great memory, and I could tell that obviously from who you put on Mount Rushmore in that story, you're a big Paul O'Neill fan, and you want to know something? Who could argue with you? That passion, we need a little bit more of that on this current team where, I hate to say it, Charles, but it really boils down to this, this I hate to lose kind of mentality where I'll do anything. I'll cut off my arm rather than lose. That was Paul O'Neill.
That's what it was with. Yeah,
that was him.
I think that came also with old man Steinbrenner. Love him or not. When it comes down to it, at the end of the day, he put his money on the field because he believed in the team.
Okay, let's go back to the phones. And calling in from Vancouver, Canada, let's welcome in Lee.
Hi there, Mike.
Lee, thank you for calling in. How's the weather in Vancouver? What are we looking at?
Well, it's pretty sunny today, but it's been more winter-like here than normal winters. So more snow and more like winter, I guess.
Well, if you were watching yesterday's first spring training game from Tampa, Florida, did you?
Yeah.
That had to warm you up.
It did, and I was actually just watching the game today, and against the Phillies, and the Florida sunshine looks pretty nice.
Lee, Steinbrenner Mt. Rushmore, top 4. Who do you have?
Okay, top 4, and I will go with, this is in reverse chronological order, would be Jeter, Mariano, Reggie Jackson, and the last one's a tough one for me. I'm going to go with Thurman Munson, but I feel bad about leaving off Gator Ron Guidry, who I saw pitch, but I'm going to stick with Thurman.
Yeah. Great answers, and it's hard to argue with Reggie. He was only on the team for 5 years, so that's one thing that some Yankee fans would give pushback on, that he wasn't on the Yankees for that long of his career.
I hear you.
But he started off with Kansas City, then he went to Oakland, Baltimore, but we all know what he did in '77 with those 3 home runs, and I was at that game. I ran onto the field like a lunatic, and I was ripping up sod and all of that. So just for that alone, I mean, just to deliver in '77 and break that drought that went back to the early '60s, it's hard to argue with that. And Thurman, the captain, if Reggie was the straw that stirred the drink, we all know that Thurman was the heart and soul of that 70s team. So great answers, and Guidry is a great honorable mention on your part. Now, in closing, I want to ask you a quick question, because you did mention to me that you go back all the way to 1957, so you've been a Yankee fan for a long time, and you're calling in from Vancouver now. So one question I have for you: have you been to Yankee Stadium?
I have.
Go ahead, tell us about it. What's your greatest moment actually at Yankee Stadium?
Well, it was the only time I was there. It was the old Yankee Stadium.
Wow.
I believe it was 77 or 78.
Wow.
My memory's not what it once was, but it's as good once as it ever was. And Guidry was pitching, actually. And, oh, man, what stuck with me was how nice the fans were that I was sitting in the midst of. I was really treated well, and we had a great time. Didn't know these people till I walked into the stadium, and we had a great, great time, and the beautiful day, and Yankee Stadium, and I tell you, I'll never forget it.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Lee. And as 2017 goes along, I look forward to speaking to you again.
Absolutely, Mike. Keep up the good work. I love what you're doing, and I think it's important.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you so much. Back to the phones we go. Let's welcome in Peter from Sullivan County, New York. Peter.
Mike, how you doing, pal?
Good. Thank you for calling in. You saw my question on Twitter. Who do you put on Steinbrenner Mt. Rushmore, meaning 73 forward?
Right. Like, initially when you think about questions like this, you say, go to the guys whose numbers have been retired. But with the Yankees, that list is just growing too much. But I would put in that group from the 73 to Steinbrenner era, like I said, Jeter, Mariano, and I didn't want to go to whole, Fab Four. So I try to go with guys from each, smaller era. I went with Munson and Mattingly.
Yeah.
And some of the close guys like Jackson, Reggie Jackson, I never really, he had some good years, but I don't think he was with the team long enough as a player. I think 5 years. And I think, Bernie Williams could be a good argument also.
Great answer, Peter. And actually, at the top of the show, I gave my 4, and that's what I came up with. And just as you said, Bernie would be my honorable mention, and 4-time World Series champ, 5-time All-Star, the 4 Gold Gloves. A lot of people forget about that, and the batting champ in '98, and who could forget the ALCS in '96 when he won the MVP there? Just so many great memories with Bernie. But we're going to go over to Palm Beach, Florida, and we're going to welcome in Daniel. Danny, are you with us?
I'm with you, Mike. How are you?
All right, Dan. Thank you for calling in. Dan, if you had to put 4 current Yankees on Mount Rushmore, who would they be?
I would say Mariano Rivera. I would go with Derek Jeter. And I would get Don Mattingly and Ron Guidry in there. Wow. Those 4 right there are my top 4 for 73 on.
Great answers. And it's hard to argue with Ron Guidry. 170 wins, 91 losses for his career. 4-time All-Star, 2 World Series rings. Who can forget 1978? Cy Young, 25-3. Unbelievable, Dan. Unbelievable.
One of the great seasons a pitcher could have, I'd say.
Agreed. So great point with that. And, it's nice that you're throwing Mattingly in. The one thing, obviously, that some Yankee fans are going to say is that he didn't have the championship rings, but that was of no fault to him. He was really the face of the Yankees of the 80s.
I agree. And also the year he went 335 with 345, 35 home runs, 145 ribbies. He got robbed of the MVP that year.
Great point. And you know what? What might have been, Dan, if he didn't hurt his back in '87?
Oh, I agree, Mike. One of my all-time favorites, Don Mattingly. He's a hero of mine growing up. So I really have a lot of respect for him.
Great point. And again, who can forget 9 Gold Gloves? 9.
Oh, tell me. I know. He's a great all-around ball player and a great person on top of it. A lot of respect for him. Good in the community and loved by all.
Well said, Dan. Okay, back to the busy phone lines we go, and we're going to go back to the Pacific Northwest in Rochester, Washington State, to be specific. Sean, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Sean, thank you for calling in. Question for you. Steinbrenner Mt. Rushmore. Who do you have?
That's funny you bring that up. When I was sitting down thinking about it, I had to put him on there. He could go on Major League Baseball's Mount Rushmore for owners. So when I'm doing the numbers, I'm like, okay, Jeter, Mo, I think I'm going the Boss. That's one of the ones I had to kind of put up there.
Wow. You know what? You're the first one to give that as an answer. You know what? And that's a unique answer. We're figuring if we're going to have a mountain and we're going to create a whole nother Mount Rushmore, why not give one spot to the person that owns the mountain?
Yeah, exactly. Who changed the mountain? He's the one who changed the mountain. That's where
that is great.
I'm surprised you guys haven't had more like that, because it stuck with me, and I'm like, you know what, Steinbrenner, he's got to be one of the faces.
Well, you know what? That is a great answer. I guess we're all we're thinking in terms of players only, but you want to know something. But we understand. It's a great point but you know what? The interesting kind of thing about it, Sean, is that the old Yankee Stadium was built in 23. George bought the team in 73, and there is just a great kind of symmetry to the whole thing, where the Yankees were so great for so many years, the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. But when he bought them in the early 70s, they were in deep decline, and there were many that felt that the Yankees may never recover to see another, golden era. But, just because of his vision and the way he treated free agency, he was like a pioneer when it came to that. You could understand your point of view, but okay. So I'll ask you this way: even with George on Mount Rushmore, along with Jeter and Mariano, who would your fourth face be?
And that's where I was thinking, Mr. October with Reggie, or I kind of grew up in the '90s, so I'm falling heavy on '90s. So I had Jeter, Mo, maybe Bernie. But then it's getting heavy 90s, so I thought I'd go a little bit older and go Reggie, and then I kind of had the Boss. So let's think of a fourth one real quick. I've always been a big Bernie Williams fan. He always did it by the book. He did it. He was the most flashy player, but I don't know why I fixated so much on Bernie, but I wore number 51. I had a baseball card in my hat of Bernie when he was that guy, and he wasn't even Mr. Popular.
It's a great answer. I mean, 297 career lifetime hitter with power, switch hitter, and as you said, center field, 4-time Gold Glove winner. I mean, he's one of my favorite players of all time. Sean, also let me ask you this. You're calling from Washington State. My question is, and I know that you watch all of the Yankee games on TV, have you ever been to Yankee Stadium? And
yeah, I have actually. Me and my dad made a couple trips. We went the last year of the old stadium. I got to sit my fanny in one of the old seats. Our first game in, I had my back against the upper deck wall, or the very upper deck wall. I sat in one of the last seats in Yankee Stadium, but was just happy to get in the stadium. You know, so I couldn't believe I was there.
Wow! All right, now so you're saying, so Sean, you're saying 2008? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, 2008,
okay.
And then we came back the following year, 2009, to the opening of the new stadium.
Wow!
And yeah, I know. Quick story with that. So
yeah.
It's my 24th birthday.
Wow.
It's the bottom of the ninth, and Hideki Matsui. It's July 20th, 2009.
Wow.
Hideki Matsui comes up with 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth and hits a walk-off home run on my 24th birthday.
Wow.
It was incredible. It's something that I'm sure I could put in a book, you know, and the only thing that topped it was the day before I got to meet Mariano Rivera at his restaurant.
Wow.
So it was kind of like this kid from Pacific Northwest, and I'm just, you know, I come here and I'm like, oh my God, I love New York City. This is why I'm a Yankee fan, you know, like that's once in a lifetime stuff happening, and it just happened my second trip to New York, you know, so it was one of those, I'll forever be a Yankee fan for those moments.